This is 5 on 20 News, where the news is fresh and the newscasters are fresher. With Sean Madrid
and Jeff Weber, coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. First, the local headlines.
The Tucson City Council has voted to temporarily halt a program that destroyed guns seized by police. While the council program is suspended, council members are battling a state law from 2013 that fines law enforcement for destroying guns instead of selling them. The Arizona Attorney General's office warned the city that they were subject to millions in fines if they were found to have violated the law. Another law from 2016 forces Arizona cities to forfeit state revenue if they continue to violate a law after a warning. In response to the council delivered a 7-0 vote to suspend the program. City records show that since 2013, the Tucson Police Department has destroyed 4,820 guns. Those firearms have been robbed of their day of glory. They will never be able to be used in an argument over a parking space.
And last night, the Tucson City Council and Mayor Jonathan Rothschild considered a pilot program that would turn old buildings into small businesses.
Just to be clear, Councilman Kozaczek, the motion is to go forward today with this pilot program. Sure. As we begin to identify some of these other roadblocks, as you call them, then we put them through the process.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else on this?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to also point of clarification. I also hear an aggressive approach to expand, not just the pilot program, but also look at some of the code issues, we'll call them roadblocks that might be out there. So that will be my direction in terms of the policy level that I heard from you.
All right, thank you. All right, and let Mr. Mabry, we're ready to vote.
Right. I just want to point out that one element of the proposed pilot program may have to come back for an ordinance, and that's the fee waivers.
Okay. Well, then.
We accept.
Yeah, do it. All right. We've got a motion and a second. Anything else on this matter? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
The initiative they passed is called the Adaptive Reuse Pilot Program. Similar projects have been launched in San Francisco, Seattle, and Washington, D.C., and have been shown to be successful. While it sounds like a no-lose proposition, there will be challenges. Officials say that the biggest difficulties will be bringing the old buildings up to code, which could be very expensive for the city. They hope that the project will have the same transformative effect as it did in bigger cities. If they hope for this plan to succeed, they might want to come up with a catchier name. Can we suggest from shithole to chic?
President Obama is considering a move that would designate 4 million acres in the states of Arizona, Utah, and Nevada as national monuments. But Senator John McCain says there are certain legal issues that may prevent Obama from making the designation. Meanwhile, environmental groups say that the president has the power under the Antiquities Act to protect these areas, which are near the Grand Canyon in Arizona, the Boar's Ears site in Utah, and Gold Butte in Nevada. Critics on the move say that Obama has already designated 24 national monuments and shouldn't continue to appoint more without legislative process. McCain and Senator Jeff Flake appeared to echo the point of view that as they called for Obama to go through the legislature. If the past predicts the future, those elected officials will soon forget to vote on the issue. Supporters conducted a survey on the issue and found that 80% of participants wanted the federal government to protect lands around the Grand Canyon. But Representative Paul Gosar, an Arizona Republican, says he has seen polls showing that 70% of Arizonans oppose the measure. He then admitted that the poll was taken during his family's Thanksgiving dinner with his son, Paul Jr., the only supporter of Obama's plan. Supporters were hopeful that a decision would be made before Donald Trump takes office. The president-elect has threatened to overturn the decision and build a Boar's Ears hog hut on the ancient tribal land.
And I wanted to take a minute to talk about the program you're watching right now. Here at 5 on 20, we are undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism. We're going to give you the news as we see it, and we want more people to speak up with us. We need writers, hosts, actors, anchors, camera people, sound people, the whole gamut. The times require a new way of informing ourselves, so join us. Do it now. Email us at info@creativetucson.org to get involved. And if you think there's a story we're missing, a person we should interview, an upcoming event we should cover, or have any kind of news tips, email us at info@creativetucson.org. We are here for you, and we want to cover all stories from all points of view, so don't be strangers. Now, in national and international news.
Despicable former Senator Rick Santorum is at it again, and the internet is making him pay. Last night, Santorum fielded a question on the CNN special, The Messy Truth, from accomplished streamer Ana Navarro, who was brought to the U.S. by her parents when she was 7. Let's watch what he had to say.
Elizabeth Vilchis, she is in fact a young dreamer, and she's got a question for you.
Yes, thank you for having me, first of all, and for letting me be part of the discussion. Growing up here in America, one thing I always heard was that there was a shortage of individuals who entered careers of science, engineering, and technology. And so I decided to be part of the solution. I actually earned a degree in mechanical engineering. I have a career in the technology sector, and I've spent almost a decade working with students, getting them to focus on entering careers in engineering. And I stand to lose all the work that I've done if the new administration decides to end DACA, which is the program that allows undocumented individuals like myself to have the ability to work. It's not an immigration status, it's just the ability to work. I will lose my career. My career will come to an end if that program ends, and I will also potentially be labeled for deportation, which means that I'm going to be removed from the communities that I've contributed to so much. And so as 2017 starts, I'd like to ask for your advice. How would you advise somebody like me for planning my future and what lays ahead?
Yeah. My own personal story is my father came to this country and was 7 years old. And the reason he came when he was 7 years old is because he wasn't allowed to come here.
Wait, how old
until
were
he
you?
was 7 years old.
I was 7.
So,
he was 7 years old.
Right. So, and he wasn't allowed to come because there was a law in place that he couldn't come. My grandfather was here and spent the first 7 years living in America, working in America, but was not allowed to be with his family because of the immigration laws at the time. And I remember asking my father how, and he was in Mussolini's Italy. Not a very, very, very pleasant place to be. And I remember asking him, and he hated Italy because it was a horrible childhood in his mind. And I asked him, I said, you know, did you ever resent America? He said, no, America was worth the wait. It was worth doing it the right way. And I think what most people in America feel is that you've been given a tremendous benefit by being here in this country. You just described something that I don't know what country that your parents came from, but my guess is you wouldn't have had the opportunities to be able to accomplish what you have. My final point is you have the ability to go to any other country right now and apply those wares and be successful, and then reapply to come back to America if you so choose.
So, Senator,
can I answer you?
Sure.
First of all, this is your country. No matter what he says, no matter what anybody else says, this is your country. And I, as an American,
it's not what the law says.
I, as an American, thank you for the contributions you are making to our joint country. And I want you to do it. So if you're asking me
If you are lucky enough to have erased this conservative politician from your memory, let me remind you that he's the dude who compared homosexuality to bestiality back in 2003. The move prompted sex advice columnist Dan Savage to call on his listeners to invent a definition for the word Santorum. What they came up with was the frothy mixture of lube and fecal matter. With the power of Savage's following, the website created to promote the definition, spreadingsantorum.com, soon ranked higher than Santorum's own website in Google search results. And now, Santorum is telling a Mexican-born engineer to leave his country. But at least he's getting dragged online for saying horrendous things again. God bless the internet.
Pro-lifers can be seen grinning ear to God-fearing ear today after 2 major anti-abortion measures passed on Tuesday. Ohio Congress approved the strictest abortion law in the country, which bans abortions after the first detection of a fetal heartbeat, which is usually around 6 weeks. Emboldened by incoming President Trump, Ohio Republicans are hopeful that the Supreme Court won't strike down the law next year. The law was tacked onto the end of a bill intended to address child abuse and quietly passed through Congress. Ironically, the bill makes no exceptions for rape and incest. Representatives from Ohio have tried twice to turn the anti-abortion measure into law, but both times they failed to pass the Senate. 2 other states, Arkansas and North Dakota, have also passed the ban. But the law was later found unconstitutional by a circuit court, and the Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal. The Ohio bill would consider abortion to be a 5th-degree felony, with doctors facing a year in jail for performing abortions without checking for a heartbeat. However, there is one glimmer of hope. Governor John Kasich could line-item veto the bill. He also said he opposes the ban due to constitutional concerns. Now's the time to grow a pair, Kasich. And we're not done with the abortion news yet. A Texas state agency is now releasing informational pamphlets that falsely claim that abortions lead to an increased cancer risk. The Texas Department of State Health Services issued the newest version of the hilariously titled A Women's Right to Know on Monday. It contained a section titled Breast Cancer Risk and included statistics that have been refuted by numerous peer-reviewed studies. The pamphlet also falsely claims that women who have abortions can become infertile. One section says that state legislators banned abortions after 20 weeks because that is when babies can feel pain in the womb. Peer-reviewed medical studies say that actually happens at 30 weeks. The pamphlet ends with a warning that after an abortion, women will become depressed or have thoughts of suicide, which is no different than how women in Texas are feeling right now.
President Obama delivered his final security speech yesterday while on his "You're Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone" tour. Obama delivered the speech at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. He soberly spoke about the challenges regarding worldwide terrorism and reflecting upon his victories and failures over the years he spent in office. The president warned that the goal of terrorism is to scare us into changing who we are and our democracy. He warned Donald Trump to make decisions driven by reason over fear. Well, that's like asking a hot dog, just a regular dog, to be motivated by professional success rather than an actual hot dog. In the speech, Obama said he thinks that the country is on more secure footing than it was 8 years ago. He said that he was particularly proud of banning harsh interrogation measures at Guantanamo Bay. Obama then acknowledged that homegrown terrorism has increased and will be the biggest challenge over the next few years. Throughout the speech, Obama aimed advice toward his successor and urged him to use restraint. However, Trump has shown that he will declare war on subtlety by promising a more aggressive approach toward the Middle East. He appointed James Mad Dog Mattis, who came to life after walking out of a late-night screening of Dr. Strangelove.
Oil giveth and oil taketh away. The Rockefeller family, who sits on a multi-billion-dollar fortune, will divest some of its charity funds from fossil fuel companies. The Rockefeller Family Fund spokesman singled out ExxonMobil, calling them morally reprehensible, and pulled $45 million invested in the company. The move follows an investigation released by New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. He found that ExxonMobil deliberately lied to the public about the effects of climate change in the 1980s and 90s. The company's own scientists warned them about the dangers of climate change, while ExxonMobil claimed that climate science was unproven. The fund's fortune originated with John D. Rockefeller, the world's first oil baron and richest American man who ever lived through his control of the oil industry and his ownership of Standard Oil. Descendants of John D. Rockefeller set up the Rockefeller Family Fund charity in 1967. It is different from the Rockefeller Fund, the larger of the two, which is worth about $4 billion and chose not to divest from fossil fuels.
New research by a group of economists shows that half of the U.S. has experienced zero growth since the 1970s, while the other half of the country has doubled their wealth. The study was conducted by Emmanuel Saez, Gabrielle Zuckman, and Thomas Piketty, who had a surprise hit 2 years ago with his book, Capital in the 21st Century. It was one of the most detailed studies on economic inequality. In the 1980s, the bottom 50% accounted for 20% of the total wealth, while it now accounts for 12%. The missing 8% went to the top 1% of the country. The 1% has seen their wealth double since the 1980s. The study found that the small growth amongst the bottom 99% came mostly from an increase in public programs. From 1980 to 2014, the authors found that 7 out of $10 earned went to the top 10% of Americans. Another stunning find was in 2014, members of the top 1% took home 81 times as much as they did in 1980. Among the bottom half, the average income stayed around $16,000 before taking government programs into account. The authors point out that the ratio between the two groups is similar to the ratio of rich Western countries to sub-Saharan African countries. The only bright spot in the study showed that the middle class is doing better than those Make America Great Again hats would lead you to believe. The middle class was shown to have grown in terms of income, largely because of employee benefits, which were not counted in earlier studies. The authors concluded that the widening income gap is mainly driven by investment income, including gains made from real estate. Piketty has said that a system has been created where wealthy families accumulate capital and hand it off to their children. This creates ever-growing gaps between the rich and the poor as these investments continually grow in value. Piketty suggests a higher estate tax, also known as a death tax, which taxes inherited wealth to narrow the gap. He warns that income inequality has been the prime cause of revolts throughout history, and the U.S. needs to solve the problem. But don't hold your breath. Trump said on the campaign trail that he seeks to eliminate the death tax completely.
Wells Fargo has been quietly trying to kill lawsuits stemming from customers charging the bank with unlawfully setting up fake accounts. In public, incoming CEO Timothy Sloan has said that the bank is doing all it can to gain the customers' trust back. But at the same time, Wells Fargo has forced many of these cases into arbitration, which usually favors large corporations. In arbitration, plaintiffs are unable to band together in a class action, which is more likely to be won. Strict rules that bar conflicts of interest also do not apply in arbitration, so corporations can often convince a business-friendly arbiter to take the case. Wells Fargo says that arbitration agreements are in the bank's contract when a bank account is opened, but customers say they were victims of identity fraud, a crime not covered in the bank's customer contract. That's according to the 3 people who actually read it. Sloan, the CEO, said that the bank learned an important lesson from the experience. He says that next year, Wells Fargo will begin including an identity theft waiver in their newest contract.
The union leader representing the workers at Indianapolis manufacturing company Carrier claims that Donald Trump lied throughout his speech last week. Trump appeared at the Carrier factory to announce that he had helped to keep their jobs in the U.S. The company reportedly planned to move some of its operations overseas. Trump cut a deal with the company, who will receive $7 million in subsidies to keep 1,100 jobs in the country. Now, Chuck Jones, president of the United Steelworkers, says that Trump vastly overstated the effects of the deal. He says that of the 1,700 workers at the plant, 350 were never scheduled to leave. This betrays the narrative that the deal with Carrier saved factory jobs, which have been disappearing for the past 30 years, and played a large role in Trump's victory. Carrier confirmed that 800 factory jobs would be saved as part of the deal, less than 50% of the workforce. United Technologies, the defense company who owns Carrier, also plans to move 800 of their workers to Mexico this year. Gregory Hayes, CEO of United Technologies, was seen after the speech at a local bakery, where he devoured an entire cake in front of a crowd of onlookers. This was Sean Madrid
and Jeff Weber for 5 on 20 News. Next up, Sophie Gibson-Rush tells us what with local music this week. Don't miss it.
tonight. It did.
It's not in. Hi, Tucson. I'm Sophie, and that was Efterklang, a Danish band, on their 55-minute live film, The Last Concert, which was not their last concert, and that's from 2014. The performance was filmed by Vincent Moon, a master filmmaker, and the music features the South Denmark Philharmonic as well as the South Denmark Girls Choir, alongside the three-piece band. The presence of the orchestra and the choir and the production quality of the video were conceived of by the band, who then applied for a grant from the Danish Arts Council to pay the expenses of such a massive project. They got it, but it wasn't their first government grant, nor would it be their last. The majority of this group's ambitious videos have been funded in one way or another by the Danish government, and I bet you've never heard of them, Efterklang. Canada, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Iceland all have funding for music built into their national budgets. In Norway, $26 million was set aside to pay for music in 2010. In 2006, the Canadian agency that oversees music funds said it controls a budget of roughly $12.4 million and handed out awards to 1/3 or more of the 3,800 applicants who sought support. Broken Social Scene and its label, for example, were offered more than $140,000. Arcade Fire and Stars were also beneficiaries. A Wolf Parade video received a grant of $20,000. Islands also got $20,000 for a video, among other projects. Denmark's export agency gives similarly large grants to bands on tour in the US, viewing popular music radically as an export, like tea, or tulips, or drugs, or reindeer. The Danish band, the Figurines, was given $18,000 towards their US tour. Iceland is in the practice of going splitsies with Icelandic touring bands, often paying half their expenses on the road. Sometimes this is through a record label, but most of the time it goes directly to the artist in the form of a subsidy. The thing is that you don't already have to be successful in these countries to get government support, although there is, as you would imagine, a lot of competition in the music scene for these grants. A lot of the time, the philosophy behind these subsidies is not to reward bands that have already made it, but to support the bands that need it most. Obviously, vision and commitment are essential to getting support, but the idea is that government support will alleviate the financial stress usually experienced by musicians, and by lifting this burden, the musicians can then focus on their art, and through this focus, they will make better art, and then they will make it on the global scene, and then they will make Sweden proud and possibly rich. This revolutionary concept has made Sweden, Canada, Iceland, and Denmark major players in the global music scene in the last 20 years. Doesn't that all sound dreamy? Don't you want that? Before you get all excited and throw on a Nordic sweater and make herring for dinner, remember that citizens of Canada pay a 33% income tax. In Sweden, it's 50%, and in Norway, it's a whopping 55%. Those high taxes enable enormous benefits, though. Free healthcare, advanced social welfare programs, and funding for the arts. The healthcare and social welfare programs often allow artists to aim their attention on their art rather than their day jobs and bodily well-being. But is that struggle to survive and create what makes American music so good? It's an American tradition to fight through a service job, to tour in a jalopy, praying that night's venue will give you a free meal and a drink ticket, to crowdsource your first album, to record in a freezing warehouse, to film your music videos on your iPhone. And the music is still somehow great. Tucson is a service town. Most local musicians hold down a day job, grabbing scraps of time to practice music when they can. They worry about healthcare, rent, and groceries, and go to great lengths to fund their musical projects. Tucson doesn't have a lot of financial resources, and Arizona certainly doesn't have the most advanced social programs. But what Tucson does have is time and space. It's still relatively cheap to live here. That means that artists aren't spending 60 hours a week at a service job trying to make their $800 rent, which affords them some time to work and practice. Tucson also has space. We have many unused buildings awaiting renewal. Some of them are owned by developers and some of them are owned by the city. Let's turn these buildings into practice spaces and recording studios. There are other ways the government can foster the arts in Tucson. Supporting working relationships between different artistic organizations is a great way for the city to support musicians. What if a local band recorded an album with the Tucson Symphony in a building supplied by the project by the city, and Creative Tucson filmed it? With a little bit of government help, there's very little to stand in the way of something like that. Creative Tucson is a great example of a union between the city and arts organizations to provide artists with more resources. We can't be like Denmark financially, and we don't have to be. We have other assets. The concept of act local and think global applies here. We do not live in a country that actively supports the arts, not in comparison with Scandinavian countries and Canada. But we could live in a city that provides government support for local music. That support doesn't even have to be dollars, but rather resources for creativity, time, and space. We're always wondering, why isn't Tucson a rising star in the national music scene? Or why didn't this band break out? If we invest in our music as an industry, as an export, maybe we could change those questions. And yes, I am a dirty socialist. Want to support local music this week? Go to a show. You are a resource. Your body at a show is a building block supporting our music scene. Here are some of those shows you could go to. Tomorrow, Dirt Friends opens for Hideout at Club Congress. If you've ever seen this segment before or had a conversation with me about basically anything, you know how much I love Dirt Friends. Always a great band to see live and a really hard-working group of musicians who deserve your support. Haboob, formerly Jazz Telephone, is also playing a set at the new bar Owls Club on 5th Avenue. This is a secret show, so sorry for letting the cat out of the bag. On Friday, there's Lollapalooza, a tribute show celebrating KXCI's 33rd birthday and Lalo Guerra's 100th birthday at El Casino Ballroom. For those who don't know, Lalo Guerra is known as the father of Chicano music, and pretty much every kid who grew up playing mariachi in Tucson knows his songs like they know their own heartbeat. He was a true Tucson icon, and so is the Casino Ballroom. Opened in 1947, this space is a historic location for Latin music. It's also beautiful, and the floor bounces a little bit in the way that those old ballroom sprung floors do. Saturday is a doozy. You're gonna have to choose. Tucson Rock Lottery is an annual event where 25 musicians meet in the morning, randomly form 5 bands, write 3 original songs, learn 1 cover song, and perform them on stage that night. The breakneck action starts at 9 at Flycatcher, and it features a host of extraordinary local musicians. Asian Fred will play their last show for a while at Shays with Crab Legs. They're going to take a break from performing to write and record some new music. It's a sweet kind of sorrow, I feel. The Wanda Junes and DeChuco perform at St. Charles Tavern. They're presenting a rock and roll weekend on Saturday. On Sunday, as part of the same event, there will be a record swap from 2 to 5 at St. Charles as well. The Tucson Symphony presents Handel's Messiah, a stock Christmas tradition. You know it. It goes Alleluia, 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 and then you rinse and repeat. Handel was writing in his 3rd language, English, when he wrote this piece, and so the choir also repeats the phrase, "For we like sheep," multiple times before moving into the final clause, "are fast astray." That's Saturday night and Sunday afternoon at Catalina Foothills High School. Thanks for watching, Tucson. I'll see you out there, and if not out there, in here, same time next week.